Fighting Blindness Canada's View Point is a virtual education series that brings you the latest in vision research presented by health experts from across Canada. The webinar you're about to watch is a recording. To learn more about the research we fund and upcoming webinars and events, please visit our website at fightingblindness.ca. This View Point webinar is proudly presented by Bayer and supported by Abbvie, Apellis, Beacon Therapeutics, Janssen, MeiraGTx, Novartis and Roche. Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed this webinar and share your thoughts with us in the comment section below.
Thank you, Jackie. And now I'm going to introduce Dr. Mark Simone to join us on stage. And he's going to be talking about some really exciting advances in gene therapy. So Dr. Simone was raised in Halifax, Nova Scotia. He moved to Calgary to complete his master's degree as well as his doctorate of medicine at the University of Calgary. And then he completed his ophthalmology residence back in Dalhousie before completing further training at the University of Alberta, where he has stayed. And he has joined Alberta Retina Consultants and is a fellow of the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons of Canada and an assistant professor in the Department of Ophthalmology. And so, yeah, please join us on stage, Dr. Simone.
Thank you very much. I have everything I need. Pardon me? I will wave. Yeah, you will wave. Good. Okay. I can wave. So I'm really excited to chat with you all today. As you know, I'm from Edmonton, and what we've been doing up there, yes, that's right, and go Oilers, right? I know this is a bad place to say that, but go Oilers. Come on, I got some. You guys might have a chance next year. You fired your coach, okay? Everything's okay. So I'm going to talk about Luxturna, and Luxturna is, out of all the things I've done in my career, this to me is one of the most important things that I've done, because what we've been able to do is take something which previously did not have a treatment for it and provide people with an excellent treatment that has been proven to have efficacy, and also that gives people a lot of hope. And so, you know, I know a lot of my patients are children. I love my children very much. I can't imagine as a parent what it would be like to go through something like that. And so for me, it's a really amazing thing, and I'm really happy to share it with you today. So we're going to talk about Luxturna and pioneering gene therapy, okay? And once again, go Oilers. So just as a financial disclosure relevant to the talk, I do consult for the Novartis Ocular Gene Therapy National Advisory Board. So there you go. So these are my children, and what I will do with these slides, there are some images in this, and there's really no other way to describe things sometimes. But I will provide the slides for everybody who's interested afterwards, so you can take a closer look at them and make sure that you're able to see what I'm showing. And I'll do a good job of trying to paint a very nice picture for everybody in the audience. On the left-hand side, or the right-hand side of the screen, is my son, Ben. So they drove with me down here this morning from Edmonton they're at their grandparents' right now. Ben is like a real techie, as you can tell. He made that battery out of 2 lemons and some wire, and it's powering that clock. And he's 5. I thought that was pretty neat, eh? And then there's the polar opposite of my son, who is my daughter, and that is Clara. She is pink everything, pink shoes, pink dress, ballerina all the time, and she runs our entire house. So there they are there. Here we are again. So on the left hand, or the right hand side, sorry, that's Clara and I at our lake property that we have, and it's frozen. I'm from the ocean. I didn't really realize that what you can do on a frozen lake in the winter. It's unbelievable. So now we have snowmobiles, if you can believe it. And then on the right-hand side, there we all are. My wife, Carly's in the picture. Clara's, again, riding a motorbike or doing something wild. And Ben's sort of pretending he's involved on the side. Very good. Go Oilers. So this is my son again. We're at the Oilers game there. He's quite excited. Now, my house is a divided house because my wife is from Calgary. And so my son, Ben, who's actually wearing an Oilers jersey here, he sides with the Calgary group, okay? And then my daughter Clara has I got her a pink Oilers jersey so that she would be on my team. And so when they're playing each other, our house sits in different sides of the room. Sometimes we don't even sit in the same room with each other because it gets really intense. Here I told Ben that if you got an Oilers jersey, you might get on TV. That's why he got it. So he immediately took it off when he got home. So we're going to talk about inherited retinal diseases, and specifically those that come from RPE65 gene mutations and their relevance with treatment with Luxturna, which is the new therapy that we're doing. We'll talk about viral vectors and Luxturna, their development, surgical administration, Then we're going to talk about Luxturna in Canada, and then Luxturna specifically in Alberta. I think we have done, and Mary can correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of the gene therapy so far in Alberta, and we've created a really good program to have it done. And thank you to our government who's decided to publicly fund this drug, which has not happened really, I think, for a lot of other important drugs like this before. So inherited retinal dystrophies and RPE65, this is when you put your sleeping caps on, okay? So basically inherited retinal disease, and I know that this has been gone over before, but we'll do it a little bit. They're a family of genetic disorders that cause retinal degeneration and dysfunction. And the two specific ones that I'd like to talk about are Leber's congenital amaurosis, or LCA, and retinitis pigmentosa, because both of those can manifest from mutations in the RPE65 gene. And then there's many others: cone rod dystrophies, choroideremia, Stargardt macular degeneration. The key thing about these is they're rare, okay? And accurate diagnosis may be very difficult and require multiple physician visits. And that's where people like Matt Benson, who will speak to you later, and I'm not sure if he spoke before, is very important because he's got the brain, okay? And he'll figure these things out. And then genetic testing, of course, through clinics like his, allow us to make these genetic diagnoses and determine whether or not we can provide treatment as surgeons. There are few and no treatments historically available, and that's why Luxturna is very revolutionary, because we now can provide treatment for people with an RPE65 gene mutation. This is what I tried to memorize for my Royal College exam. Okay, so this is a Venn diagram determining many of the genes that are involved in inherited retinal disease. I bet you if I asked Matt any one of these, he'd be able to spit it out and tell you all about it, and no problem. But we're going to look at one little gene here. I think this is the button. Yeah, this is the one we're concerned about right here, RPE65. And so like you see the overlapping Venn diagram, it's involved in both the development of Leber's congenital amaurosis and retinitis pigmentosa. So how does the gene work? Well, in its most basic form, what it does is it's a critical component of the visual cycle. So it's a gene within photoreceptors, and it's necessary for the metabolism of vitamin A. And vitamin A is really important in photoreceptor metabolism, and without it, or with lack of its metabolism, the photoreceptors break down and they degenerate, and through that you get progressive visual loss over the span of a lifetime. What are some symptoms and signs? So this is a very busy slide. This goes against all slide making rules, but symptoms would be like night blindness, okay, or shaky eyes, which is called nystagmus. You can have, like we say, disability or decreased light ability, photophobia, so sensitivity to light is another big symptom that you can have. Prolonged dark adaptation, so when you get into the dark room, you cannot adapt to the dark room, and it makes dark tasks very, very difficult for people. Digital ocular sign, or eye rubbing or poking. So a lot of people with RPE65 gene mutation rub their eyes, and they rub them quite aggressively. And so that's a sign that you could look for to tell whether or not that person may have that gene mutation. Light seeking behavior. So if you put someone in a dark spot, they'll immediately look for a source of light to try and help them out. Okay? And then, or of course, orientation or mobility issues, especially in dark places. There's a lot of clinical signs that we look for, so a lot of testing that will point us in the right direction. I won't go through them all at length, but big ones would be, you know, loss of peripheral vision on your visual field when you go in for a test that way. There's some signs when you look into people's eyes, and I'll show you some pictures of people's eyes, and that'll illustrate the spectrum of, you know, the different changes that can happen because of this gene mutation. And then, of course, things like color vision, deficiencies, and things along those lines. I like to make it pretty clear too, if anybody has a question, or if my wife tells me I like to talk over people's heads sometimes. So if that happens, just stop me so we can clear it up, because it's way better just to ask. Okay, so don't hesitate, please. Yeah. So RPE65 can be either diagnosed, the dystrophy related, so early in life, or it can be diagnosed in young adulthood. When it's diagnosed early in life, like at infancy, we generally call it Leber congenital amaurosis. That's the term for it. If it's diagnosed later in life, we call it retinitis pigmentosa. Okay, and the signs and symptoms that you would see in a very young child would be the eye shaky movement, right? They wouldn't fix and follow, so they would not engage you and then follow you as you're speaking, or if an object is moving in front of them. And then, of course, the light-seeking behavior that we talked about. As you progress towards young adulthood, the main finding is more loss of your peripheral vision, or the field of vision which people see through. So your visual field becomes very narrow. There's a lot of diagnosis you can make in between. We leave that to Dr. Benson. But as a general thing, LCA, young adults, infants, retinitis pigmentosa, young adults. And the key, of course, and where it all comes to fruition is in your genetic test. And so genetic testing is extremely important because it allows us to determine if the gene of interest is one that we can target for therapy. So this is a picture. It's not coming up very well, but this is a 10-year-old female who was diagnosed with Leber's congenital amaurosis, and you can see that really, when I look in, there's some subtle changes, but it looks pretty normal. Okay, there's not a lot of large changes that you would see just to look into that person's eye, and that's why your clinical exam, the whole exam, is very important, and not just the imaging that you get. This is their OCT. This is a fancy technology that we use to make a cross section of the retina. It gives us a histologic, or like you would look if you were looking through a microscope at the retinal tissues. And you can see, like I could take my word for it, that there is loss of the outer layers of the retina, and that's the photoreceptors. And those are the key things that allow you to see. And so that's someone who is very young. Here's someone very different who is older. This is a 52-year-old person. I recently performed surgery on this person for Luxturna not too long ago. You can see that their back of their eye is full of these spicules, and that's the classic sign of retinitis pigmentosa. So that illustrates the difference in how the disease progresses as you move along. Okay. And like I say, I'll provide all these slides for you guys so you can see them and be able to look at them more closely. All of these patients have consented having their images shown and also been de-identified. Again, this is their OCT. So here they have basically no photoreceptors. It's basically gone. And so this person, hopefully with treatment, some of those will regenerate. We'll have to see how it goes. So how common is this? So it's not common, just like we said. So in the United States, 1 in 200,000 people carry the gene RPE65. Okay. How much does that actually make up of the proportion of people that have Leber's congenital amaurosis? Well, it's only about 8.5% of those people. So it's really quite an uncommon thing. Retinitis pigmentosa, again, maybe there's about 1,430 people in the US today that have RP. And again, only 2.0% of them, so 2%, actually have the genetic diagnosis of a biallelic or 2 genes that are affected of RPE65. So what is Luxturna then? So Luxturna allows us to treat people with an RPE65 gene mutation. The complicated name for it is Veretogene Neparvovec. That'll be the last time I say that today, okay? So we're gonna go with Luxturna, okay? So what is gene therapy in general? So I know you've probably talked about this, but I like to think about it in a pretty simplistic way. So you have a problem. You have a person who is unable to express a gene within the cells in their body, okay? And what we need to do is deliver that gene to them in a way that they can then reproduce it lifelong, okay? So how do you do that? Well, everybody has a factory in their body, cells, right? So cells can make the gene. We just have to provide them with the appropriate genetic material to do it. So I'm a viral immunologist by trade. So viruses are really good at getting into cells. COVID-19 proved all of that for sure. Everybody got it at some point or another. And so viruses are an excellent thing because they can carry genetic material, and you can change a virus so that it will not replicate itself, but only replicate a certain gene. Seems like a brilliant idea, right? So what we do with Luxturna is we take the gene RPE65, we put it into a genetically modified virus. Then that virus, that's like the transport truck that carries the gene to the factory, gets into the cell. Once it's in there, the virus uses your own replicating material or the machinery within your cell to then produce that gene. Right? So it's a really, really interesting concept. What are viral vectors? So like we said, viral vectors are viruses which have been rearranged so that they do not replicate themselves. They only produce a protein or a gene of interest. And so there's many different types. The type that we're interested in is called adeno-associated virus. The other ones are like adenovirus, lentivirus. Their names don't really matter, but what you have to do is find a vector that is able to escape your immune system so that it doesn't cause problems, and also be good enough and a good fit to carry the payload or the gene of interest, right? And so AAV is a perfect fit for RPE65 because it can take it, It's not very active to the immune system, and it can carry that gene very well and then replicate it within the cells in the eye. So how do we use it? So this is the fun part for me. So we have the viral vector, it comes to the operating room, and then what we do is with a surgery called vitrectomy surgery, we then inject the medication underneath the retina inside somebody's eye. And that allows the transport truck or your payload to get to where it's supposed to go, to the factory, right? And once it's there, the virus or the vector gets into the cells and starts to produce the gene that was once deficient, right? So it seems pretty simple, right? But it took a long time to get there, that's for sure. And we'll talk about that in just a second. So this is, again, another busy slide, but this is just to show how long it's taken to get this into our hands. So we first knew that we could do this in 1997, okay? And then throughout the years, you have to go through multiple trials. So the big phase 3 trial that showed that this could work was in 2012, right? The United States got this in 2017, and it wasn't until 2020 that this was approved for use in Canada. The big problem with the use of it is that the drug is inherently expensive, right? And so funding became an issue to get people treated. But the Alberta government stepped up, and now we publicly fund this for people who need it. And it's great because we've actually been able to bring people from other provinces to have this done too. So Nova Scotia, BC, and Saskatchewan. Did you have a question, sir?
Yes, sir. What was the source country then? It wasn't the U.S. Where in the world did it originate?
You stumped me. Mary, where did it come from?
The drugs actually comes from Germany.
There you go. They're efficient engineers. Yeah. So we finally got it in 2020. So if you can believe that, it took from 1997 to 2020 where there was a viable treatment, and now finally we can use it. So it's pretty amazing, right? Okay, so like I'm sure basic science, we all probably had a bit of a nap there, but this is my daughter, so she likes to sleep anywhere, okay? So this picture's not coming up very well, but this is when we were in Whistler, both of these pictures. We went to this light show at night, and I had her on my shoulders, and all of a sudden I felt this dead weight on the top of my head. And she had literally fallen asleep on my shoulders, and so I had to carry her for the next 2 hours while she slept up there, and she didn't budge. Here she is on the chairlift, okay? She fell asleep on the chairlift. She was very excited she got on, but that was good enough for today. So there you go. So let's talk about the clinical development of Luxturna. So the big phase 3 trial that sort of got everybody's attention was Study 301. And I'll sort of go back here. But what they did was this thing called a multi-luminance mobility test. So what is that? So basically you take somebody and you provide them with an obstacle course, okay? But you do that at various light levels, which they refer to as lux, okay? So a lux, at 1 lux would be like midnight, okay, moonlit basically, whereas 400 lux is a bright office space. So you can think of it that way. So what they did was they determined how these people would do at low light levels. They then treated them with Luxturna, and from there saw how at the same light level they would improve, okay? And so let's take a peek and see. This is truly amazing, really, like when you see this. So we'll start with the one on the right. So this is a patient who is trying to go through the maze at 4 lux. So that's pretty dark. Okay. So you can see them there. And like I say, I will provide these, but I'll describe it. So there's a maze in front of this person, and they're starting to try and walk it. But immediately they bump into an elevated block in the maze. They can't navigate that. Okay. They have a hard time getting over that. And then there's a styrofoam object in front of them, which they again run into. And the whole time they're walking, you can see that they're extremely uneasy about what they're doing, right? And so I can only imagine, you know, that would be very difficult to navigate any sort of environment in. Now let's switch to the one on the left, or your left. So this is after 1 year of treatment with Luxturna, okay? So same light level, same person. They walk in and immediately navigate the maze without any problem. Isn't that amazing? Like, I think that sort of says it all, right? It's an excellent treatment, and when I saw this, I was blown away. Like, it really, truly is amazing. So here they go through again, and they're done in an appropriate amount of time. And if you could go from not seeing well in the dark and having that much difficulty to all of a sudden being able to navigate like that, that's life-changing, right? It's fantastic. So I think that's really a fantastic illustration of what we're trying to achieve, right? So from this study, what we've determined is that Luxturna is a targeted one-time gene therapy. So one time is key. We treat them people once. We don't have to treat them again over and over again. You think of people who come in for age-related macular degeneration, probably the most common thing that I treat in my office. They're there every month for an injection, every month. And in my office, they're traveling as far as High Level, Grand Prairie. So that's 5-6 hours of driving there and back every month. They used to come all the way down to see us from the Northwest Territories to do it. So they would fly every month for their injections. So this is one time. You do it once, and then you don't have to do it again. So the fun part, surgery. I do like doing surgery. So let's talk about the surgical administration of Luxturna and how we actually do it, okay? So essentially it's a subretinal injection. We do a procedure called vitrectomy surgery where we make 3 really small incisions in the eye. We then look through the front of the eye like a window. And under a big microscope, we work inside the eye to deliver the drug. The drug is delivered through a cannula, which we then use to raise a bleb underneath the retina. And that's the drug going in. And then eventually that drug filters through and gets into the cells where it needs to be. I have a video. Let's watch it. So this is one of our first Luxturna surgeries, and my fellow who put it together put some neat lights there. There you go. So this is the procedure here, and I'll just pause it here. So this is the incisions that we make to go into the eye. So you see there's 3 ports, 1, 2, and 3. And then there we use a little lens on the front, and from there we move into the back of the eye. So you'll see eventually a little cannula coming in. That's going in on the right-hand side. I had a bit of trouble. There it goes in again. And from that cannula, we put it right to the retina, and then we jet the medication, and the jet of medication creates a bubble right there, see? And so all that is the medication going underneath the retina. So like I said, I'll provide that for you guys so you can see it and look at it again. And we'll show it to you, but take my word for it, okay? The medication is in there, okay? So I'll show another video here too. It shows a few other parts of the procedure which I think are important. So there's a final product. The medication is in the eye. So we can advance to the next slide. So, this is another case we did here. So maybe you can see it a bit better, but there is all of a sudden this bubble underneath the retina, and that again is all the medication that's going in. I think you can advance to the next one now. So I can advance. So this shows a few more parts of the procedure. So what you're going to see here is this is vitrectomy. So I'm removing the jelly ball from the inside of the eye here with a cutter, okay? And then I put in this thing called Kenalog, and that allows me to stain all of the jelly inside the eye to make sure we get it all, because if we don't, there can be problems down the road. And these people have a really interesting jelly inside their eye. It's very difficult to pick up off the back of the eye. Again, here we're going into the eye. There's one of our cannulas that we use. Sorry if anybody has a queasy stomach. And here again, we're just gonna raise the bubble underneath the retina. So can't really see it here, but there comes the cannula here, and pop, there it goes. So all that medication then disperses underneath the retina again. So I'm not as good as some of the authors that tell stories at illustrating pictures in your mind, but we'll give you the video so that you can look more closely. So let's talk about Luxturna in Canada, okay? So how does it work? So we are one of the treatment centers in Canada. There are 4, okay? The Royal Alex Hospital is the Western Canadian Treatment Center. That's where we do our surgery in Edmonton. There's Sick Kids in Toronto. They work together with Sunnybrook Hospital, and that's their group there will administer things for Ontario and then the Eastern provinces. And then there's the Hotel Maisonneuve Rosemont in Montreal. So those are the only 4. But there are what we call co-management sites, okay? Those are the big centers in various parts of the country, such as Vancouver Hospital. Calgary would be a co-management site. There's the IWK Healthcare Center in Halifax. There's one in St. John's. And so we work together with those sites. People cannot come back constantly for post-operative visits and checks. So if someone is identified with a mutation that is appropriate for treatment, we then bring them out to Edmonton, we provide them with the treatment, and then the co-management site helps them, because it would be very arduous to continuously fly from Halifax to Edmonton every couple months for us to check on them, right? I want to talk about this a little bit. This is the patient journey, okay, throughout the whole procedure. So we start off with their first visits, and basically what that does is you get your genetic testing, you get a lot of tests done, and we confirm whether or not you are able to be a candidate for surgery with Luxturna. From there, we secure funding. That used to be a larger issue, but now we don't have to worry about it. We just say, okay, let's go. And isn't that awesome? Because that was a big holdup before. Once we secure that, we do the first surgery. And the first surgery, people come and see us. We do a post-operative visit, and then they go most of the time to their co-management sites where they're seen there. We wait another 6 days, okay, or sometimes 10 days. It has to be a minimum of 6 and no longer than 2 weeks. And then we perform the second eye surgery. From there, there's a number of tests that are done afterwards to ensure that the medication is working. And we always keep data for Luxturna in a national registry so that we can look at it and always look back and check and make sure things are going okay. So I want to finish off by talking about how things have gone in Alberta so far. So an amazing event, as you guys know, in November 2022, Alberta provincial government decided to publicly fund Luxturna. So all of a sudden we were able to provide this treatment. And since then, it's been like a runaway train, to be honest. It's moved very, very quickly. So within a month, less than a month, we had already done 3. Okay? And so we did the first subretinal injections of Luxturna, not in Canada, but in Alberta, on December 14th, 2022, and that was done by myself, Dr. Tennant, and Dr. Seamone, all at our Alberta Retina Consultants. Each of us had one patient, and each of us did one surgery. All 3 of us were there the whole time to make sure everything went okay. And it is really nice to have a couple other surgeons in the operating room because you can talk about what you're doing. There's always 2 heads are better than 1. And so we continue to use at least 2 surgeons every time we do these surgeries. I have to give a big hats off to our pharmacy. So handling this drug is not easy all the time. And it takes a lot of coordination, especially when you're doing multiple patients in a day. And so they have everything laid out for us. They've got the plan. They are over at the university hospital, which is across the river from us, but they get it over, transported. We have a text group where we're making sure, okay, case 1 is done. Is the drug ready? Is it delivered? Everything has to be checked off. So it's kind of like clockwork when we do it. And it works really nicely. We also had our OR staff, of course, our ocular genetics team, vitreoretinal surgeons like myself, and then Novartis. This is our plan. So I get this before I go to the OR, and it's hard to see, but that's how detailed they write it out. So it starts off with 7:45, patient number 1 arrives, and then from there it's all written out every step, every time, so we can tell that we're on time. And we try and keep it as organized as possible because we do not want disorganization on that day, and I've got to give them a lot of credit for helping us with that. This I have to say because when we did these first surgeries, it was nerve-wracking for everybody, for the patients, for the surgeons, for the pharmacists. And my son could tell that something was going on the night before, like I wasn't as talkative as usual, or maybe I was hiding in my room somewhere. But so he wakes up, I wake up to go to the operating room the next day, and he comes flying out of his room, and he goes, "Dad, if you're gonna help these people, don't forget to bring your carrots." And I thought that was one of the neatest things ever, so I thought I'd share that with you guys today. Yeah. So all of our surgeries, the first day went without complications. Everybody's recovering nicely. We're very excited to see what the results show in the next few months. Of course, this is one of those sort of hurry up and wait scenarios. We get the surgery done, and then of course we have to wait for the drug to take effect. We'll know within the next year how everybody's doing. Since then though, we've done 7 patients, 10 eyes, and from 4 different provinces. So our most recent surgical date was last Friday. We did 4 people in a row, each in an hour. And so we've created a really efficient system to have this done. 1 patient flew all the way from Nova Scotia. We've had patients from British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and of course in Alberta. And so we're very proud of what we've accomplished, and we're hoping that we can help more people across the country with this. That's the surgical team. So on the right-hand side is me. Looking a little bit less dressed up than I am today. In the front is Dr. Matt Tennant, so he's, and Dr. Simone's on the left. Both of those are my colleagues, my associates, and we are very proud. And of course, you can see our smiles on our faces. We were very proud of ourselves that day as well, so it's good. So with that, I'll take any questions and comments, and please ask me anything you'd like. I'm really happy to share this with you all, and so I'm happy to answer any questions. And thank you.
What do you do in the second surgery?
So we do the same thing, but we do it for the other eye. So we would never do 2 eyes in one day, just in case there was a problem.
But do you always do both eyes?
Yes, we always
Yes.
do both eyes. Yeah, we just wait a week in between so that they can recover, and we can make sure that everything's going on the right track before we do the second. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Just kind of related to the last one. You said that you had done 7 patients and 10 eyes. If you do both eyes each time, how does that work?
Their surgery's coming up on Friday. Yeah, so we're in flux. So we just did 4 eyes in a row last Friday, and then this is our intermediate time, and then we do them again. We didn't have any monocular patients. But good question.
Hi, I'm sure everyone in this room is getting sick of me asking questions. By the way, go Flames go, even though they're not in the playoffs. But anyway,
Next year.
Besides the point. I have RP, and I don't know what gene I have. So is that something your clinic provides, or do I have to go to a genetic specialist beforehand?
So generally the pathway would be that you would get a referral from your ophthalmologist or optometrist to someone like Dr. Benson, who's our ocular genetics person, or someone here in Calgary who does the same thing. And from there, then they would do your genetic testing. And so once we know the results of your genetic test, then you just get a referral to someone like me, and then we just take it from there. So it's a pretty simple pathway, which is good. And I think it's probably worth knowing the gene, hey? With the way things are developing, you know, it is the target that we look for to treat. And so, you know, I'm sure either myself or Dr. Benson would be happy to chat with you more about how we can make that happen for you.
Yeah, that would be fantastic, because, you know, it's about time something was for RP. So that's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was really fascinating. I was just wondering, do we know yet when we treat younger individuals with LCA versus older with RP, if either group have seen more of an improvement?
I think thinking of it intuitively, those people with more viable retinal cells, so generally in younger patients that have not progressed as far, may notice more improvement in the long term. That being said, we provide the treatment to anybody who we feel is eligible, because even if we can stop things from getting worse, you know, then that is an excellent thing as well. And so we don't discriminate based on age or viability of the retinal cells at this point in time. But, you know, inherently, you think if you had more cells that could uptake the viral vector, then that would be beneficial, right?
Hello, doctor. Can you please explain in the whole treatment process what role Novartis, or maybe Mary can comment, what role Novartis plays in the treatment process?
Well, Mary has made it all happen. Novartis really has made it all happen. Like, I was at a meeting and Mary approached me about doing the training for this, and after that the ball started rolling. And so Novartis plays a massive role. Mary's always in correspondence with us during all of our surgeries. She's always there to troubleshoot things for us if things are not going correctly. And of course, Novartis supplies the drug. So that is the other very big thing that we're very thankful for with them. So our relationship with Novartis for this has been fantastic. It's been a really excellent, mutually beneficial relationship.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'd just like to know what the recovery process is after this injection is done.
Yeah, sure. So I just want to go back to put up the Oilers picture there. Okay, there we go. So the recovery process it's reasonable. The two big things are, one, we inject a gas bubble into the eye at the end of the case, and what that does is acts to sort of steamroll the drug into the right position in the retina. So often when people wake up from surgery, we do everything under general anesthetic. When they wake up from surgery, the vision is actually worse than when we started. And so that's because you can't see through air or gas. It's like looking through 100 feet of water, right? And so we have to really make sure that we let people know that and have a good discussion of what to expect post-operative day one, and then they're moving forward. The other thing too is positioning. So they have to lay on their back for 24 hours after surgery, so the gas bubble does its job. And so that's another thing. And it's not always easy to, like one of my patients was 7 years old. Imagine trying to get a 7-year-old to lay on their back for that long. So there's a lot of communication with the parents. And then the recovery, it's not like a cataract surgery where all of a sudden the opacity is gone and the vision is good, right? It takes a while. And so, you know, people even now, a few months out after surgery, are still at their baseline from where they were when they started. So there has to be a really good conversation about expectations, because it will work. It just takes a while. And so I think, you know, that Tom Petty song, "The waiting is the hardest part," right? Well, there was some truth to that. And so generally, they, like, as far as comfort and all that goes, people are doing quite well. It's more the expectations and what to expect moving forward, where we have to have really good conversations with parents and patients. And that's probably the most difficult part so far about the recovery that we've noticed.
Was Luxturna tested on any other variants of RP, or, I mean, it seems pretty specific to RPE65, but is there other variants that were looked at?
It is entirely specific to RPE65 mutation. But that's to be said, the concept now is there in proof, right? And so technically, if you have the right vector and the right gene, then you should be able to do this for other inherited retinal diseases. And there's lots of studies in the pipe for other forms and other genetic genotypes, if you will. And so there, in the future, I mean, there'll be, hopefully this will spread widely over the other types of inherited retinal diseases, and not just inherited retinal diseases. So we're doing a trial right now at our center for macular degeneration, where we actually, you know, the drug Lucentis or Eylea or whichever one of those, we're using a viral vector to actually produce that within people's eyes to make treatment one time as opposed to every month. So I think gene therapy truly is the wave of the future. The technique of subretinal delivery is going to be very important moving forward. And so it won't just stop here. It hopefully will become much more widely used.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Simone.
Thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure. Thank you.